What happened to Senator Cory Booker in the last presidential debate when he began his opening statement will not happen next time.
Thank you, Dana. Last week, the President of the United States attacked an American city, calling it a disgusting, rat-infested, rodent mess. We need a nation that understands that these tired, old language,
Stand by, Senator.
I will stand by.
Please stand by.
The crowd chanting "Fire Pantaleo" got their way today when the New York City Police Commissioner fired Officer Daniel Pantaleo, who was seen on video 5 years ago using a chokehold on Eric Garner that the medical examiner said caused Eric Garner's death. And joining our discussion now is Cory Booker, Democratic Senator from New Jersey and presidential candidate. Senator Booker, I just wanted to begin with the developments in the Eric Garner's story today that has been 5 years in the making, and finally we see the firing. You're a former mayor yourself. What is your reaction to what you saw today?
Well, first of all, this is justice delayed, and 5 years to come to this conclusion. It's very frustrating, the process. But I think the larger point that I want to make, as a guy who knows the fear of being followed because of the color of your skin, being pulled over, that for every name we know, like Eric Garner, there are thousands we do not. For every video that we actually see, there are thousands and thousands of incidents that aren't captured on video that never get the kind of justice that this enabled. Remember, the police report after this incident, the way they wrote it, cleaned everything up and it would have gone undiscovered. It was really that video that captured it. And so where have we come as a society where we are not really getting to the root of the large spread problem of police accountability, where it's just that time that something gets captured on a videotape that we actually see justice done. And even when justice gets done, 5 years later, after an unarmed civilian was choked to death after saying repeatedly time and time again, "I can't breathe." So as a guy who's actually had to run a police department, who learned a lot along the way, and now as a senator has led on police accountability legislation, we could do so much better as a nation dealing with issues of implicit racial bias, accountability for use of force, and transparency in data and actions, both from things like officer video cameras all the way to reporting requirements that could go a much longer way in dealing with this problem in our country.
Let's listen to what Emerald Garner, Eric Garner's daughter, said today.
Commissioner O'Neill, I thank you for doing the right thing. I truly, sincerely thank you for firing the officer. Regardless to however you came up to your decision, you finally made a decision that should have been made 5 years ago. I should not be here standing with my brother fatherless. I should be here with my father. But Pantaleo took that away from me on 7/17. So, yes, he's fired, but the fight is not over. We will continue to fight. Thank you.
Senator, I think you and I know that she's not the last person who's going to lose her father in questionable circumstances, in interaction with police. In a Booker administration, what would your Attorney General do in cases like this, and what should the Justice Department do in cases like this?
Well, let's go further than that, because unless you have an administration that puts police accountability at the center of their priority list, the Obama administration actually had a task force on 21st century policing that came up with a whole lot of recommendations, which this administration has failed to implement whatsoever. This was Black Lives Matter activists sitting at a table with big city police chiefs, coming up with a whole constellation of common sense things that we can do to deal with this problem in our country, not just of police-involved shootings, but of police accountability in general. And so it's not just waiting till something happens. We can't be reactivists. We must be activists in this situation. We must have a president that understands this issue in a sense, with a sense of urgency, so that we can start doing things to create police accountability in this country, not waiting for crises to happen to respond to them, but to make sure that crises, that this kind of actions are not happening in our country again. We can do something about it, but we must have a president that understands the urgency and feels intimately a connection to this crisis.
Another thing that Donald Trump doesn't seem to feel a connection to or urgency about is gun safety legislation. He made some comments about the possibility of background checks after the recent mass murders we saw, but then he has now since clarified that he's not really budging on it. Let's listen to what the president had to say about it, and then I'd like you to respond to it.
People don't realize we have very strong background checks right now. You go in to buy a gun, you have to sign up. There are a lot of background checks that have been approved over the years. So I'll have to see what it is. But Congress is meeting, bipartisan. A lot of people want to see something happen. But just remember this, big mental problem, and we do have a lot of background checks right now.
Senator, on a presidential debate stage with Donald Trump on that subject, what would you have to say after he says something like that?
I would say he's wrong, and the kind of ignorance and idiocy that he's putting out there, even NRA members, 84% of which believe we need universal, comprehensive background checks. I would talk to him about my numerous visits to Mother Emanuel Church, where the white supremacists that came in there and shot 9 people to death. I would say to those folks that loophole that they used to buy a gun through the porous holes within the background check system are unacceptable. This president is wrong, and people are dying because of his inaction. And I'll tell you this right now, we live in a country where we are capitulating to fear. We are literally surrendering our liberty and our freedom from fear, freedom from gun violence. We are sending kids to school right now and into September, literally giving them the message, we can't protect you, so we're going to teach you in school how to hide, how to shelter in place. This is unacceptable. No other country does this to its communities, where people, and I talk to Latino activists and leaders and community members who are afraid now, Sikh Americans or Muslim Americans who are terrified. We see plots being uncovered this past weekend of white supremacists to go into synagogues and cause more mayhem and murder. What is it going to take in this country for us to do the common sense things that we know will save us? This is an issue of freedom and liberty, the culture of our country. The toxin of fear is taking over because of the inaction of leaders like Donald Trump, who ultimately are responsible. He is responsible for this rise of terroristic hate in our country. Leaders take responsibility. His language is contributing to the problem as opposed to him taking responsibility to stop it. I will be the president who lives in a neighborhood where these shootings happen too long, who's had a Shahad Smith murdered on my block. There's so many of us that live in communities like this every single day where we worry just about our children going to school. And so I'm running for president and will be the president that takes a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they've never seen before, and brings an end to this terror in our communities and this weakness in our country where we're not showing the strength that we really have to protect our children, our communities, our families, and our country.
Senator Booker, I just want to take you back to Mother Emanuel Church for a moment, because I want you to talk about what it feels like, what it felt like for you to be there. It's not just a church. It's the scene of one of our worst mass murders, our completely racially motivated mass murder. And it's a place where we know Donald Trump is never going to visit. It's the kind of place we know most Republican candidates for office never visit. Your neighborhood is a place most Republican candidates for office will never visit. What are they missing by never setting foot in Mother Emanuel Church, never setting foot in your neighborhood?
Look, we're a nation that there used to be a time, forget party, when 4 girls were killed in a bombing in Birmingham. The conscience of our country responded. We changed laws. When women were dying because of the Shirtwaist Factory fire, throwing themselves out windows, it affected the hearts of our nation. This is about having a more courageous empathy, a sense of love. Patriotism is love of country. You cannot love your country unless you love your fellow countrymen and women. And love isn't a sentiment. Love is saying that I'm gonna fight to defend folks. I'm gonna be there when there's injustice. And that's why it is painful to me that we have such a constipation of compassion and empathy and love in this country amongst some who just can't see the suffering of others, who every single day have to live with the pain or the grief or the hurt or the wretchedness of the violence that they or their family experienced. And so enough of that. We just need to get back to having a nation with a revival of a civic grace where we understand that we have to be there for anybody, because King said this so eloquently, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We cannot have communities that do nothing and wait until this violence is visited upon them and then suddenly they're awakened to the sense of urgency. We have a crisis in our country that is ripping apart concerts and nightclubs and churches and synagogues and schools. And if we don't stop this, if we wait for more and more bloodshed until we finally get it, every day we wait, people in communities that I know intimately suffer. Every day we wait to stop people from being able to walk into a gun show and go to a casual cellar and fill up with a trunk full of weapons. Every day we wait, someone right now in America, some white supremacist, is plotting against us and our values and our communities. And so what I have to say is enough talk. We need action. And if you're not going to act, we're going to remove you from office. This is yet another reason why this man will be defeated in the White House, because now we need courage, we need strength, we need action. We need leaders that will take responsibility. And that's what I'm going to do should I be president of the United States.
Democratic presidential candidate Senator Cory Booker, thank you very much for joining our discussion tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.